In front of the Kamami Old Bookstore, a young woman with glasses calls out for Sunday, announcing that it's time to eat. She holds a box of food, looking around and wondering where the cat could be. Inside, she finds Sunday the cat and calls out to it. Another person is seen sitting at a desk, their back turned to the camera. Sunday eagerly eats from its bowl, munching away at the food provided. As the two people watch the cat eat, the woman with glasses remarks with envy how nice it must be to just eat, sleep, and meow all day. She then wonders aloud why the cat is named Sunday. The person at the desk, who is playing a video game, replies that they don't know and that they never got an answer from Kumo either. The scene flashes back to 4 years ago, showing a sprawling cityscape before focusing on an apartment building. A man, Kaminome Takashi, is introduced as he returns home. Inside, his wife Misaki is washing dishes while his young daughter, Rina, proudly announces that she helped carry the plates. Takashi announces he's home, but his daughter Rina turns away from him. He wonders why she's being cold, but Misaki smiles, suggesting she's just playing and wants to make him jealous. As Takashi pretends to leave for work again, Rina's playful coldness melts away. She clings to his leg, begging him not to go, and asks for a hug. Rina gives her father a kiss on the cheek. Overjoyed, Takashi kneels down and embraces his daughter tightly. The camera focuses on a package of frozen beef croquettes, a quick and easy meal option. Takashi asks about having frozen food again, but Misaki says it's fine since it takes too long to cook. Unwilling to settle, Takashi decides to cook something himself, and soon a full, handmade meal is ready on the table. The happy family eats together. Rina happily exclaims that handmade food is so much better. During dinner, Rina excitedly tells her papa that she wants a kitten. Misaki seems open to the idea, suggesting they could get permission, but Takashi immediately shuts it down, stating they can't because they live in an apartment complex. Rina continues to plead for a kitten. Takashi explains his reasoning further. He knows that in the end, he'll be the one who has to look after it, not Rina or Misaki, so his answer is still no. Rina throws a tantrum, crying that she wants it, but Takashi holds firm, saying he can't take on any more work. Heartbroken by her father's refusal, Rina lashes out, shouting, "I hate you, Papa," leaving Takashi stunned and speechless. Rina continues her outburst with a childish insult. The argument leaves a heavy silence, with Takashi looking out the window, taken aback by his daughter's words. Sometime later that night, Takashi returns home once again, but this time he is holding a small, stray kitten in his arms. Rina's eyes light up with pure joy as she sees the kitten. She runs towards it, screaming in excitement. A surprised Misaki asks what's gotten into him. Takashi explains he met someone looking for a person to adopt the cat. All is forgiven as Rina lovingly hugs her dad's leg. Takashi gently pats Rina on the head, telling her that the cat is now a part of their family and she must take good care of it. Misaki teasingly notes how soft he is when it comes to their daughter. As he watches them, Takashi quietly contemplates the reality of a cat's lifespan, noting it's only about 10 to 15 years. His thoughts drift to the future, a sense of melancholy creeping in as he realizes that the cat will likely pass away around the time Rina reaches puberty. Takashi continues his thought, believing it would be a good lesson for Rina to experience the death of a living being at her age. Misaki listens, realizing how deeply he has thought about this. And so, the cat found its place in the family. In a joyful moment, Rina happily calls out to her new pet, Sunday. The story clarifies the origin of the name. As Rina calls the cat Sunday, Takashi comments on what a strange name it is. Misaki points out the irony, asking if he didn't get the cat on a Wednesday. She explains the real reason. Rina loves Sunday because it's the only day she can be with her papa all day long. This touches Takashi, leaving him speechless. Changing the subject, Misaki brings up the second-hand bookstore left behind by Takashi's late father, asking if he is considering taking over the business. As Rina sleeps peacefully, Takashi watches her and contemplates the idea. He strokes her back and thinks to himself that taking over the store might be a good thing. Holding his sleeping daughter and their new kitten, Takashi makes a heartfelt promise. If he takes over the store, then every day will be Sunday for Rina. The flashback ends, and the story returns to the daily life of the family in their apartment complex. Reality sets in. Takashi hasn't taken over the store yet. He leaves for his current job as Rina waves goodbye. He heads down the stairs and locks the door behind him. Later that day, around 3 p.m., Misaki tells Rina they are going shopping. Rina gently pets Sunday, telling him to be a good boy and watch the house before they head out. While at the supermarket, Rina asks her mom to buy her some more chocolate, but Misaki refuses, saying they already bought some. Rina playfully sticks her tongue out in response. A sense of dread appears. A strange man with long, unkempt hair is seen looking towards Misaki and Rina in the store. He watches them with a blank, unsettling expression. Unaware they are being watched, Misaki and Rina walk home along the sidewalk, a picture of normal family life. The stalker continues to follow them. From a distance, his boot is seen in the foreground as he watches the mother and child walk away, his gaze fixed upon them. Back home, Rina is having another tantrum, pulling on her mother's shirt and demanding sweets. Misaki, trying to do chores, tells her to stop or she'll get mad. As Misaki tries to put things away, Rina persists. Annoyed, Misaki exclaims in frustration. Suddenly, Misaki notices something on the ground just outside her door. As she peers out, the stalker is standing right there in the hallway, asking if he may know who's there. The man holds up a cup of popcorn, feigning innocence as he addresses her. He explains that he was the one lining up behind her at the supermarket just now, and that her little girl dropped a box of sweets. Misaki looks at the box, confused. Misaki's mind races. She becomes suspicious, wondering if this is normal. Why would a stranger follow them all the way to their house over a dropped item? Sensing her hesitation, the man says he'll just leave the item in front of her door and turns to place it down. Seeing this, Misaki's suspicion wavers for a moment, thinking it might be a genuine act of kindness. Rina shakes her head, denying it was hers. Misaki sighs, wondering if her daughter quietly snuck the sweets. Believing the man has left, she opens the door to clean up the mess outside. In a heart-stopping moment, a hand slams against the door, preventing it from closing. The intrusion has begun. The man's face appears in the doorway, his expression turning menacing as he forces his way into the apartment, leaving Misaki no time to react. His sinister intentions become horrifyingly clear as he utters, "You know, a married woman is an object of everyone's desire, after all." Frozen in fear, Misaki stammers, unable to comprehend the situation as the intruder stands in her home. Her first instinct is to call the police. Without a word, the man's fist flies forward, connecting brutally with Misaki's face. The force of the blow sends her crumpling to the wooden floor. As the cat Sunday hisses and Rina stares in shock, the intruder calmly locks the front door. On the floor, Misaki weakly pleads for him to wait. The attacker looks down, his expression cold and devoid of any emotion or remorse. He grabs the fallen Misaki by her hair, dragging her further into the apartment while her daughter Rina watches, paralyzed by terror. The horrific sight breaks Rina's paralysis, and she lets out a piercing scream of terror. The assault continues relentlessly as the attacker rains down punches on Misaki. Breathing heavily, the man stands over Misaki's now motionless body, her fate grimly apparent. Annoyed by Rina's incessant screaming, the attacker casually takes off his jacket. He screams at the terrified child to shut up, his rage now directed at her. Rina continues to cry for her papa. Beside her mother's body, Sunday the cat watches the attacker. The man looks at the crying child and says, "Okay then," a chilling promise of more violence to come. Enraged by the noise, the man grabs a nearby electric fan, lifting it over his head as a weapon. Time passes. Takashi returns home by taxi, only to find the area around his apartment building swarming with police and onlookers. A crime scene. Takashi asks a bystander what's happening. Before she can answer, a stern-looking, bald man in glasses tells him it's better if he leaves quickly, his tone suggesting he knows more than he's letting on. Upstairs, a uniformed police officer stands guard, blocking the entrance to Takashi's apartment. Takashi tries to push past, frantically explaining that it's his home and his wife and daughter are inside. The officer physically stops him as Takashi's eyes widen with dawning horror. He catches a glimpse inside. The room is a mess, cordoned off by police tape. In the background, a person is taking photos of the scene. And on the floor, he sees a lifeless hand. The full horror of the situation crashes down on Takashi. He overhears one officer telling another that the signs of assault are particularly severe on the child. The officer guarding the door looks at Takashi with pity and advises him that it would be better if he doesn't look inside. The bald man from downstairs arrives, cutting the officer off. He puts his hand on the officer's shoulder, telling him Takashi is his nephew and that unrelated people aren't allowed at the scene. He pulls the officer aside, calling him a stupid idiot and telling him he knows the rules. He then calls for Takashi to come over, taking control of the situation. The man delivers the devastating news. Misaki passed away while covering her daughter. Below, a body lies concealed under a sheet. He confirms she was most probably protecting her child. Takashi's face is a blank mask of shock, his mind unable to process the nightmarish reality he has come home to. As forensics works the scene, the officer who first stopped him tries to explain the situation to a catatonic Takashi. The grim discovery continues. Sunday the cat is found dead, having hidden in a small space. A profound statement hangs in the air, a reflection on Takashi's state. Those that have felt true despair will not shed any tears. The senior officer concludes, placing a hand on Takashi's shoulder. Overwhelmed by a shock too deep for tears, Takashi kneels on the floor, his hand crushing a small box in silent anguish. Days have passed. Takashi sits alone in the trashed apartment, a hollow shell of a man surrounded by the remnants of his shattered life. The body of his cat, Sunday, lies nearby. The grim reality of neglect sets in. Sunday's body has begun to decompose on the table amongst the garbage. Takashi remains motionless, lost in an abyss of grief. He remains seated on the floor, his head bowed, consumed by a sorrow so profound it has rendered him catatonic. The door opens, and the senior officer returns. He steps into the squalor, finding Takashi in the exact same spot, still lost in his grief. The officer immediately comments on the foul, rotten stench filling the room. He finds some spoiled food and throws it out as Sunday the cat watches him. He turns to Takashi, noting that it's been almost a week and questioning if he's eaten at all during that time. The officer offers a hollow attempt at empathy, saying, "I know how you feel." But he quickly follows it with a callous question. "But what do you hope to achieve by being like this?" Breaking his long silence, Takashi finally speaks, his voice raspy. "The culprit?" he asks. For the first time, a flicker of something other than despair appears in his eyes. He begins to recount his past trauma, telling the officer about how his mother died from an illness when he was just in middle school. He explains that her death left him heavily depressed. He flashes back to seeing his wife, Misaki, a stand-in for the maternal presence he lost, and how he took her being there for granted. He recalls his youthful naivety, thinking that the peaceful, everyday moments would continue forever without change. But then, one day, she was gone, and he could never see his mother again. The finality of that loss terrified him, making him wonder what he would do if his father died next. He admits to the officer that ever since then, he has been extremely terrified of losing his family. Life went on. He got married and had a child. Then, his father passed away, leaving him to face another loss. He reflects that the person he used to be wouldn't have been able to recover. But for his daughter Rena's sake, he knew he had to get it together. From this, he developed a philosophy. Humans are able to prioritize their own children even more than the parents who gave them life. He came to believe that if Rena were to grow older and face a similar tragedy, she would surely prioritize protecting her own child over him, and he accepted that as the natural order of things. The officer seizes on this, twisting Takashi's philosophy into a platitude. "We can overcome anything," he says, "if it's for the sake of our child." He continues, setting a philosophical trap. "If there's one thing that we couldn't overcome, then it would be—" Takashi finishes the thought, his voice heavy with the unbearable truth. "The time when our child dies." The officer now begins his manipulation in earnest. He suggests that perhaps the stress of raising a mischievous and difficult child, like Rina, had an effect on Misaki. He paints a false picture of Misaki, suggesting she gradually became someone who neglected housework, pointing to frozen bento meals as evidence, and concluding she might not have been a praiseworthy mother. But the officer finishes, twisting the knife. She put her life on the line in her final moments. A hero, sacrificing everything to protect her daughter. The officer's words finally break him. Takashi clutches his shirt, a sob escaping his lips as he laments that Misaki did something he, as the father, should have done. He failed to protect them. Having broken Takashi down, the officer turns away and finally begins to talk about the case. He reveals that there is one suspect. Takashi looks up, his eyes sharp and focused for the first time. The mention of a culprit has finally pierced through his fog of grief. The officer delivers the most devastating blow yet. The culprit is the son of a police officer. Because of this, the higher-ups are stonewalling the investigation, and there are even rumors of a plan to frame a different person as a scapegoat. But he then provides a crucial piece of information. They found the culprit's skin under Misaki's fingernails from when she fought back. Furthermore, a witness saw a man with a bleeding left arm fleeing the scene, though they couldn't see his face. A spark has been lit. As Sunday yawns, Takashi slowly gets to his feet. Fueled by this new information, he walks towards the kitchen and grabs a bottle of water. He twists the cap open, a simple action that signifies a profound shift. He is no longer waiting to die. He has a purpose. He takes a long drink. The water seems to revive him, his eyes now filled with a cold resolve. The scene then cuts to a quiet, suburban house at night. This is the killer's home, a peaceful-looking house that hides a monster. Inside, the senior police officer, the killer's father, pounds on a locked door, screaming at his son. "Are you listening? You damn idiot!" His face is a mask of fury and frustration. He's furious not at the crime, but at the inconvenience it has caused him. He lays out the cover-up plan. He's arranging for his son to be transferred to study abroad. Until then, he is forbidden from leaving the house. The father walks away, muttering why he has to deal with this. And on the other side of the door, the killer sits, casually playing a video game. He responds to his father's angry tirade with a completely bored and indifferent Suyer. He remains completely engrossed in his game, surrounded by trash in his messy room, utterly unbothered by the family he destroyed. In his world, nothing has changed. His character in the game dies. "Oh crap, I died," he mutters with mild annoyance. The triviality of this virtual death is a sickening contrast to the real lives he took. An ashtray overflows with cigarettes from a brand named Seven Killer. Concludes with one last look at the house where the killer plays on, safe and protected, while Takashi is trapped in an inescapable nightmare of grief and injustice. Kumo reaches for his pack of 7 Killer cigarettes, only to find it empty. Annoyed, he glances at his phone next to an overflowing ashtray, a testament to his stress and impatience. A close-up reveals Kumo's face, his eyes filled with a grim and weary determination. He knows what he has to do. Now outside and bundled in a thick, fur-hooded jacket, Kumo's determined gaze is fixed on his destination, a nondescript house in a quiet residential neighborhood. He stands on the street, silently observing the house from a distance, a lone figure under the dim glow of the night. Looking up at the house, Kumo lets out a long, slow sigh, the cold air turning his breath into a cloud. He's preparing himself for what's to come. With his back to the target house, Kumo begins to walk down the dark, empty street, his solitary figure casting a long shadow. He makes a quick stop at a brightly lit convenience store, paying for his items. He then discreetly tucks a can into the waistband of his pants before leaving. Now carrying a small plastic bag, Kumo walks through another deserted street, the silence of the night pressing in around him. He pauses his patrol to light a freshly bought cigarette, taking a long drag as he exhales a plume of smoke into the cold air. While walking and smoking, Kumo's eyes drift upwards, scanning his surroundings from the ground to the overhead power lines, ever watchful. He comes to a stop near a corner vending machine, his bandaged hand gripping the plastic bag tightly. Suddenly, Kumo freezes. He senses a presence, a subtle sound or movement that breaks the night's stillness, and he stops dead in his tracks. He continues walking for a few more steps, pretending not to have noticed anything, before casting a sharp glance over his shoulder to confirm his suspicion. A man in a zebra-striped hoodie, Kaisei Nakahara, approaches from the opposite direction, his face obscured by the hood as he closes the distance to Kumo. As they pass each other, Kaisei suddenly lunges, ramming his shoulder into Kumo and simultaneously pressing a taser into his side. A bright electrical discharge flashes as the taser activates, sending a powerful shock directly into Kumo's body. Kumo asks him to wait while his hand is reaching into his pocket, gripping his lighter. It seems he was not affected by the taser. With surprising speed, Kumo overpowers his attacker. He now carries the limp body of Kaisei, whose zebra-striped hoodie hangs loosely, and begins to walk away from the scene. Kumo drags Kaisei's body down the street, his own steps heavy but steady as he moves them into a more secluded area. Kaisei is now on his back on the ground, groaning in pain. Kumo is on top of him, holding him down and preparing to light his lighter. Despite his situation, a bead of sweat running down his temple, Kaisei looks up at Kumo with a chilling, defiant smirk. Kaisei's smirk is wiped from his face as blood bursts from his nose, a result of Kumo's brutal counterattack. Kumo pins Kaisei's head down, his bandaged hand covering one of his eyes while his thumb presses hard against the eyelid. Kumo presses his thumb harder and harder into Kaisei's eye socket. He's not just defeating his enemy. He's dismantling him, piece by piece, as blood begins to seep out from under his thumb. With a final, sickening squelch, the brutal act is done. A torrent of blood pours from the now empty socket as Kaisei convulses, a muffled scream of pure agony escaping his lips. Kumo has taken his eye. Kumo leaves his victim, Kaisei, groaning and twitching behind a bush on the dark sidewalk, his revenge enacted. The scene transitions, moving from the wider city skyline to a specific apartment complex, and finally settling inside a small, cluttered apartment, signaling a change in time and place. Some time has passed. Kumo, his head now shaven, sits slumped against a wall in the messy room, bandages covering a wound on his forehead. Below, a fleeting memory surfaces, a close-up of him holding the small hand of his child. A close-up on Kumo's face shows the exhaustion and emptiness in his eyes. The haphazardly placed bandages on his forehead are a stark reminder of his recent, violent encounter. His contact, a bald man with glasses, arrives with a bag of food. "Here," he says, urging the despondent Kumo to eat something. The contact brings up the suspect Kumo had dealt with, informing him that the man has officially gone missing. Kumo listens silently as he looks out a broken window. From behind, the contact adds that the higher-ups in the police force don't expect to find anything, essentially confirming that the case is being dropped. Kumo brings a hand to his bandaged forehead, the weight of his actions and the news settling upon him. The contact suggests that Kumo should consider going back to work, believing that having something to do will help take his mind off the grim reality of his new life. The camera pans over the messy floor, showing discarded food containers and papers, evidence of Kumo's self-neglect and isolation. Looking up from his bleak surroundings, Kumo's attention shifts. He grabs a remote control while his cat, Sunday, sleeps peacefully nearby and turns on the television. A news report flashes on the screen, detailing a new tragedy. A man named Teriyama-san discovered his wife and son murdered in their home. The police are investigating it as a home invasion homicide, and the story immediately captivates Kamo. The report continues, showing the victim's house. The man, Teriyama, recounts the petty theft, noting that only a small amount of money, 5 or 6,000 yen, was stolen. The scene shifts to Teriyama himself, now wearing a zebra print jacket, speaking to 2 listeners. He explains that he's been haunted by the same dream since the incident. A blurry, dreamlike image shows his memory. The 3 of them, his wife, his daughter, and himself, walking together as a happy family. In the dream, he watches as his wife and daughter gradually walk ahead of him, the distance between them growing. He describes the feeling of abandonment in the dream as his family walks on without him, leaving him behind. A sharp, confident woman with dark hair, Mizuguchi, listens to his story and makes a chilling offer. "I will be your substitute," she says, positioning herself as an agent of his revenge. The scene transitions with shots of the neighborhood streets, moving the story forward in time and space. 8 days later, the exterior of the Kamami bookstore is shown, followed by the interior of an apartment above it, setting the stage for the next chapter of Kamo's life. The man with glasses, Kamo's contact, enters the new apartment. He finds Kamo, now ironically wearing a zebra print hoodie, and notes that he has moved out of the old complex. The contact asks if Kamo is living here now. With his back turned, Kamo stands before a small Buddhist altar, confirming that this is his plan. Below, his cat, Sunday, meows. Kneeling down, the contact gently strokes Sunday, commenting that a change in environment can be stressful for a cat. Kamo speaks, his gaze fixed on the photos of his deceased wife and daughter placed on the altar, stating that if things get difficult, the cat can just go back to where it was. As his contact continues to pet the now relaxed cat, Kamo states firmly, "I'm not going to go back to that place anymore. His old life is truly over." The contact looks down at Kamo, observing that even though he looks as unwell as ever, the look in his eyes has fundamentally changed. On the floor lies a newspaper with a headline about the unusual death of a suspect. He elaborates that the suspect's corpse from last month's murder case was found. However, the prime suspect in that revenge killing, the husband of the victim, has a perfect alibi, which points the finger squarely at Kamo. Leaning in with an intense gaze, the contact asks the question that hangs between them directly. "Was it you?" Kamo ignores him, instead lighting an incense stick for his family's altar. The contact scoffs, saying he doesn't want to hear any sentimental nonsense about doing this to make his late wife and daughter happy. Watching Kamo stand before the altar, the contact gives him a final warning. If he continues down this path, he will never be able to go back to a normal life. As Kamo finishes lighting the incense, the contact persists, demanding to know his true motive. "Why did you do it?" he asks. "For what reason?" The question echoes as Kamo stands before the photos of his family. He then picks up a pair of dark sunglasses, and his cat, Sunday, watches curiously. Kamo slowly puts on the sunglasses, concealing his eyes and completing his transformation. He turns to his contact and gives his cold, simple answer, "Because no one else will do it." With his face now an emotionless mask behind the dark lenses, he adds, "Because it is something no one else can do." He has accepted his role as a vigilante. The scene transitions to a sprawling, busy cityscape with a highway full of traffic, indicating a shift in the story and the passage of time. The words "present day" appear over the familiar exterior of the Kamami bookstore, bringing the narrative back to Kamo's new life. Inside the bookstore, a young girl with her hair in buns points at the cat and asks Kamo why he's named Sunday. Kamo watches as Sunday munches on his food, then reaches down to gently scratch the cat behind the ears. Looking over his shoulder at the curious customers, Kamo gives a detached, one-word answer about the cat's name: "Beats me." The story shifts again, this time to a clean, modern office building, the headquarters of a very different kind of organization. Inside, a man in a suit explains a new case. The client is a man who was so brutally attacked that the function of his eyes, ears, and mouth were taken from him, and he can now only hear through a bone transmission hearing aid. The victim is presented, sitting in a wheelchair. His eyes are swollen shut, his face disfigured. The man in the suit explains that this horrific state was inflicted upon him for a completely one-sided reason. Mizuguchi, alongside a curly-haired associate, listens to the presentation. "Let's listen to your story," she says, as the presenter explains the victim's refusal to give up, training himself to communicate by typing on a laptop. A close-up of the victim's disfigured face shows his sealed eyes. Despite his condition, he can now communicate using a keyboard, his determination evident. Sitting in his wheelchair, the victim begins to type. On the screen, watched by Mizuguchi's associate, he describes one of his attackers, a man with long black hair who speaks with a Kansai dialect. The victim continues typing, describing the second attacker, the one who orchestrated the assault, a man with sunglasses, close-cropped hair, who goes by the name Kamo. The description fits Kamo perfectly. A chilling, faint smile plays on Mizuguchi's lips. She listens to the description of Kamo, revealing that she already knows exactly who they are talking about. The presenter explains that the victim, an excellent teacher, strongly hopes that their organization, the Breakfast Club, will take his case instead of the police, pleading on behalf of himself and 3 students whose futures were also stolen. Mizuguchi crosses her legs, her poise unwavering as she weighs the plea for revenge. In the cool confidence of her posture, a silent, lethal decision is made. A self-assured smile graces Mizuguchi's lips as she delivers the verdict. "We, the Breakfast Club, will stand on the side of the victims, and we'll offer a revenge plan for them." Her words seal Kamo's fate. As the main teacher manages a grateful smile, the hunt has officially begun. The story returns to the Kamami bookstore, showing its quiet exterior and the labyrinthine, book-filled aisles within. Kamo, in his full vigilante attire of a zebra print hoodie and sunglasses, sits behind the counter, trying to blend in by casually reading a book. A young man in a striped shirt, Tora-san's colleague, appears and asks Kamo where Tora-san is, complaining that he was promised a video game match. Kamo, not looking up from his book, dismissively replies that he sent Tora-san out to buy groceries. The colleague sighs, knowing Tora-san always gets sidetracked. In the aisles, Tora-san browses for a book. As Kamo looks up from his reading, a sleek black high heel steps into the store. Tora-san is startled as the imposing figure of Mizuguchi walks past him. Mizuguchi now stands before Kamo's desk, arms crossed, looking down on him with an air of superiority and control. Kamo is visibly surprised by her appearance. Mizuguchi gives him a knowing smile and says, "It's been a while." He remains silent, holding his book. Dropping the facade, Kamo puts his book down and asks Mizuguchi what she wants. Mizuguchi springs her trap. She tells Kamo she has information on the Narima District homicidal devil, the very case that defines his quest for revenge. Kamo's eye, reflected in his sunglasses, widens in shock. Taking his silence as agreement, Mizuguchi suggests they change locations to have a private talk. They relocate to a desolate parking garage, an isolated place perfect for an ambush, with Kamo unknowingly walking right into it. Mizuguchi begins her psychological test, deliberately confusing facts about his case. She asks if he's chasing the culprit, intentionally using the wrong name for the bereaved family member. Kamo stands perfectly still, his face unreadable behind his shades as he processes her words. The empty parking garage around them feels heavy with unspoken threat. Ignoring her games, Kamo cuts to the chase, asking for the information she promised. Mizuguchi closes her eyes and says a final, chilling phrase, "I'm sorry." Suddenly, Hano appears behind Kamo, apologizing as he wraps a garrote around Kamo's neck. The ambush is sprung. The garrote is pulled taut, violently snapping Kamo's head back and choking him. Hano uses his leverage to pull Kamo off balance, causing him to stumble and drop the knife he had concealed. Hano tightens his grip, the fabric of the garrote digging deep into Kamo's neck as he struggles for air. With a powerful tug, Hano yanks the garrote, breaking Kamo's posture and sending him stumbling forward. As Kamo is thrown off balance, Hano follows up with a swift, brutal kick to his ribs. Despite the choking and the blow to his side, Kumo reacts with incredible speed, pulling out a second, smaller knife. Kumo lunges, but Hano skillfully deflects the strike. He catches Kumo's wrist and uses Kumo's own knife to slice his arm, disarming him. Kumo lies defeated on the concrete floor. Mizuguchi stands over him, a gun now in her hand, and coldly tells him, "A curse will rebound on yourself as well, Kaminoan-kun." He looks up from the ground, his sunglasses knocked aside, staring defiantly at his captor. Mizuguchi looks down at the defeated Kumo, noting his surprising composure. "You don't seem agitated," she muses, intrigued by his lack of fear. "Were you prepared for a day like this to come?" Kumo remains silent, but his eye, visible in the reflection of his sunglasses, betrays his concern. Mizuguchi presses on, revealing she knows about his partner, the one who provides him with information. Mizuguchi takes Kumo's phone, coolly informing him, "I'm borrowing your phone, okay?" Her plan to lure his partner into a trap is now in motion. Meanwhile, back at the Kammi bookstore, a long-haired man, Tsurumaki, complains that Kumo is late. Kumo's young colleague explains that Kumo asked him to look after the shop while he stepped out. Stretching lazily, Tsurumaki groans about being hungry. His demeanor changes abruptly when he receives a text message and is surprised to see it's from Kumo. The young colleague, hoping for news about dinner, asks what Kumo said. But Tsurumaki stares at his phone in grim silence. The message, sent by Mizuguchi, is a summons. It states that Kumo is in custody and demands Tsurumaki come alone to a rental warehouse before 7 p.m. It ominously references a past case and ends with a threat, P.S. You're being watched. The playful attitude vanishes from Tsurumaki's face, replaced by a cold, serious expression as he understands the danger Kumo is in. Without explanation, Tsurumaki tells his confused colleague that he's heading out and closing the shop immediately. Looking over his shoulder, he gives a grave instruction. "If I'm not back in 2 hours' time, then you go to Kumo's uncle's place." Got it. He is preparing for the worst. The young colleague is left speechless and worried as Tsurumaki leaves. The scene cuts to the stark, industrial exterior of the rental warehouses. Tsurumaki pulls up in his van, its headlights cutting through the darkness of the deserted street where the warehouse is located. He drives through the city at night, his face set with grim determination as he heads toward the trap. Tsurumaki arrives at the rental warehouse location. He stands outside, arms crossed, surveying the quiet and ominous building, alert for any sign of trouble. His van sits alone in the vast, empty parking lot, emphasizing his isolation as he walks into the lion's den. Inside, Mizuguchi hears Tsurumaki knocking. As Kumo watches helplessly from his chair, Mizuguchi notes with satisfaction, "Seems like he's here." Hano stands ready as Tsurumaki gets out of his van, preparing to lead Kumo's partner into the warehouse. The two men, Hano and Tsurumaki, share a tense, silent stare-down in the dimly lit parking lot before the confrontation begins. Hano turns and walks toward the warehouse entrance, and Tsurumaki follows close behind. Hano lifts the heavy shutter door, granting Tsurumaki access to the room where Kumo is being held. Tsurumaki steps inside and is horrified by the sight. Kumo is beaten and bound to a chair, with Mizuguchi standing calmly beside him. He looks at his captured friend and asks, "What's up with that sorry state?" Kumo can only look back, unable to answer. Mizuguchi addresses him by name, Tsurumaki. At that moment, Hano slams the metal door shut behind him. Tsurumaki realizes he's been completely cornered. Wasting no time, Tsurumaki spins around and throws a powerful right hook directly at Hano. The punch connects squarely with Hano's jaw, a solid blow that shows Tsurumaki is a capable fighter. Not letting up, Tsurumaki follows his opening with another powerful punch, aiming to quickly overwhelm Hano. The fight is over before it truly began. Tsurumaki is now on the ground, defeated. Hano stands over him, having proven to be the superior fighter. Lying on the ground but far from broken, Tsurumaki looks up at his opponent with a defiant smirk. Were you thinking that it'll end well for you? Huh. He taunts, ready for more. Back inside, Kamo, still bound to the chair, questions Mizuguchi's plan, asking what she'll do if a random passerby shows up. Mizuguchi simply smiles and tells him, "Please don't worry." She reveals the extent of her control over the situation, casually stating, "I own the warehouses and the parking lots." They're on her turf, completely isolated from the outside world. Mizuguchi shows Kamo a laptop displaying multiple security camera feeds. She explains that all roads leading to the area are monitored and that she is prepared for every possible contingency. Outside, Hano continues to taunt the downed Tsurumaki. He criticizes his past work as amateurish, mentioning a case where he hung a corpse from a bridge, revealing just how much they've investigated both him and Kamo. Mizuguchi continues to dismantle Kamo psychologically. She says she's impressed he avoided getting caught, but mockingly wonders if it was due to luck or because his uncle, a police officer, pulled strings to draw suspicion away from him. Undeterred by Hano's taunts and his own predicament, Tsurumaki cracks his knuckles. With a confident smirk, he boils the situation down to its simplest form. To put it simply, I just need to beat up this glasses guy, right? The scene opens in a desolate, mountainous area at night. Below, a lonely collection of sheds sits under the dim glow of a single streetlight, a white van parked in the gloom. In a stark, tiled room, Kamo, the man usually in charge, is now the captive. He sits bound to a chair, his hands cuffed to metal plates, his face unreadable behind his signature sunglasses and zebra print hoodie. His captor, a curly-haired man named Shimada, begins to take off his plaid jacket. Kamo's female partner watches from the side, her eyes wide with anticipation. Shimada stands ready, revealing a t-shirt underneath. Suddenly, a boot stomps forward. Someone is making a move, breaking the tense standoff. It's Kamo's long-haired associate, who has just arrived on the scene. He clenches his fist, ready to strike Shimada and rescue his boss. Shimada, however, watches him approach with a calm, steady gaze. The associate throws a powerful right hook, aiming to take Shimada down quickly. Following his punch, the associate quickly wraps his arm around Shimada's neck, trying to subdue him from behind. With a grimace of effort, the associate tightens his hold, confident that the fight is already over. He drives a knee into Shimada's side, trying to break his opponent's resistance. The associate struggles, grunting with the effort to maintain his chokehold, but Shimada remains unervingly calm, his face a mask of concentration. But the tables turn in an instant. Shimada grabs his attacker's arm, beginning to break the hold. With surprising strength, Shimada squeezes the associate's arm, his grip like a vice. Shimada's eyes widen as he finds his opening. The long-haired associate is frozen in surprise. Nearby, Kamo's partner continues to watch, and a hand is shown dripping blood, hinting at another confrontation. The associate looks up in shock as Shimada completely reverses the situation. With an odd sense of pride, Shimada begins to list the reasons his opponent underestimated him, starting with, "Because I got a shaggy head." Freed from the chokehold, Shimada lands a hard punch, sending the associate stumbling to his knees. Shimada grabs his downed opponent's hair, continuing his lecture, and a pair of glasses on. The associate groans in pain, completely at Shimada's mercy. Shimada adds another seemingly mundane detail, "And my shirt is tucked in." Looking down at the man who thought he was an easy target, Shimada asks the final, humiliating question, "Did you think that I'm weak?" In the background, Kamo's partner allows herself a small, knowing smile. A hand, presumably Kamo's, is shown bleeding. As his associate lies defeated, he furiously shouts a threat to kill Shimada, calling him a pissing baldy. Shimada stands over the beaten man and gives him a piece of advice. "Starting today, you should stop taking requests for revenge. It's not a job that an amateur can do half-heartedly." The scene briefly shifts, showing a glimpse of a different life. An eye reflected in sunglasses, a woman's hand on a bedsheet, and a couple sharing a simple meal at home. Back in the warehouse, Kamo, who seems to have freed himself from his bonds, speaks up, telling his associate to take back his words. The whole group, Kamo, his partner, Shimada, and the defeated associate, is now in a tense standoff. The long-haired associate smirks, undeterred. The idiot who went ahead and got himself captured should stay quiet, Kamo, he retorts before declaring, I'll be the one that'll beat this guy up. Ignoring Kamo's warning, the associate lunges forward, determined to prove himself in a second round against Shimada. However, his reckless attack is easily intercepted. Shimada catches the punch with one hand, effortlessly halting the associate's momentum and proving his earlier victory was no fluke. Shimada effortlessly holds back the punch, his gaze sharp and unimpressed. He looks down at his overconfident opponent, a clear glint of annoyance in his eyes as he prepares to counter. In the desolate parking lot, Shimada easily turns the tables, striking Kamo's associate with a swift blow. With a look of intense focus, Shimada unleashes a powerful and precise attack, moving faster than his opponent can react. He lands a devastating open palm, strikes squarely on the associate's face. The force of the blow sends the associate flying backward, crashing hard onto the pavement. As he lies on the ground, the associate reveals his trump card, pulling a hidden blade from his sleeve. Both men pause, surprised by this new development. The associate, now with a bloody nose, looks up in shock, while Shimada simply stares down at the weapon. Completely unfazed, Shimada notes the hidden knife and then calmly encourages his opponent. Use it. The associate glares back, a new fire in his eyes. He declares the weapon is just the right handicap for you, ready to even the odds. Getting serious, the associate sheds his outer jacket, revealing tribal tattoos on his arms. He lets the knife fall, ties back his long hair with a rubber band, and prepares for a real fight. Tying his hair back, he declares, it's on now. He takes a fighting stance, warning Shimada, don't blame me if you ended up dying, dumbass. The two now face each other in the empty lot, the associate's discarded jacket lying on the ground between them. The real fight is about to begin. A close-up reveals the intricate tattoos covering the associate's shoulders and arms, hinting at a more violent side than his initial appearance suggested. As the title for Chapter 9 appears, the associate raises his fist, ready to charge. Shimada watches him, his expression unchanging. The associate makes the first move, shuffling his feet and getting into position. He and Shimada circle each other, sizing up their opponent before the next clash. The associate blocks a low kick. Shimada ducks under a punch, his eyes sharp with focus as he prepares to counter his opponent's attack. In a flash, Shimada slips past the associate's defense, his hand darting towards his opponent's face. Shimada delivers a punishing blow from below, a powerful uppercut that snaps the associate's head back. The associate is on his knees, defeated once again. Blood sprays from the associate's mouth as Shimada's fist connects solidly with his jaw. The associate's eyes widen in shock as Shimada lands another brutal punch, showing the vast difference in their skill levels. From his seat, Kamo remains silent, his expression hidden behind his sunglasses. His partner turns to him and asks if he's okay with just watching. Kamo, still bound, coolly replies, I thought you'd resist a bit. Kamo then poses a philosophical question to the defeated associate, asking, putting up a struggle when your turn comes after taking harsh revenge on the others. Don't you think that's selfish? Kamo's partner listens silently. In the lot, the associate scoffs at Kamo's words, dismissing them as enlightened stuff. Despite being thoroughly beaten, the associate glares past Shimada towards his captured boss and yells, You big idiot! Frustrated by Kamo's lecture. Shimada looks down at the man he just defeated, who is breathing heavily, bruised and bleeding. Observing the display of loyalty, Kamo's partner remarks with a hint of irony, How gallant! You push yourself this far for your partner. Still on the ground, the defeated associate, Shimada, vehemently rejects the partner's words. Don't be stupid, he yells. I don't give a damn what happens to that baldy, referring to his boss, Kamo. Kamo's partner listens to the outburst with a stoic expression, while Kamo remains seated and silent, still a captive. Catching his breath, Shimada turns his attention back to his opponent, Tsurumaki, and says, "But you know, I've decided." A flashback reveals the source of his conviction. Two boys playing video games, a funeral portrait for a woman, and one of the boys lying injured in a hospital bed while the other weeps. Fueled by his past trauma, Shimada makes a solemn vow with blood on his lips that I'll kill every single one of the scums in this world. His raw declaration hangs in the air, capturing the attention of Kamo, his partner, and even the weary Tsurumaki. Shimada then reveals his ultimate motivation. And to do that, I need him, he says, looking towards his captured boss, Kamo. That's all there is to it. Just as Shimada finishes his heartfelt speech, Tsurumaki unexpectedly lands a clean punch to his face, cutting the moment short. In a final, desperate exchange, both men throw a punch at the same time, their fists connecting with brutal force. They both recoil from the simultaneous impact, the force of the blows stunning them both. With a final thud, both fighters collapse onto the hard pavement, simultaneously knocked out. Now, only Kamo and his partner are left standing, observing the two unconscious men on the ground. With the fight finally over, Kamo's partner takes a phone call. As she talks, she walks past a wall of knives while Kamo looks on. She calmly informs the client, regarding the request this time, "I'm sorry to say that after seeing the results of my inspection, I wouldn't be accepting the request." When the client asks why she would abandon them, she explains her group's principle. "I cannot accept a revenge request for an irrational and unjustified resentment." After finishing the call, she finally uncuffs Kamo. Tsurumaki begins to stir on the ground below. The partner checks on the man who had captured them, asking, "Are you okay, Tsurumaki?" revealing his name for the first time. She says her goodbyes to Tsurumaki, addressing Kamo as Kaminon-kun. She then tells Tsurumaki to pass on a message to Shimada, clarifying that this is the name of Kamo's defeated associate. Tsurumaki, pulling himself together, makes a final claim of victory. "I'm the one who stood up first," he says, while the defeated Shimada is shown unconscious on the ground. Walking away with Tsurumaki, the partner remarks with a sigh, "Men are so silly." With the others gone, Kamo is left alone with his unconscious associate, Shimada, lying on the ground before him. Kamo looks at his fallen comrade, then silently clenches his fist before kneeling down to lift him. As Kamo struggles to lift Shimada onto his back, he quietly says, "I know that," acknowledging the difficult path they've chosen. In his delirious, beaten state, the barely conscious Shimada mistakes Kamo for his mother, mumbling, "You are being noisy, Mom." Kamo carries his fallen comrade towards the van as the brutal sounds of their fight fade into the quiet of the empty lot. With their dark work concluded for the night, they retreat into the shadows. The story shifts completely, introducing a new face from a different time. A young high school student named Marie looks at her phone with a gentle, content smile. We see her modest life outside of school. She lives in a simple, sparse apartment, sitting alone at her low table listening to the Torayashi radio podcast. Her mother returns home only to immediately leave again for a night shift, telling Marie to fix her own dinner. Marie quietly agrees, accustomed to the solitude. For dinner, Marie prepares a simple meal of instant noodles, her routine in the quiet apartment. While straining the noodles, her hand slips, and the entire meal spills into the kitchen sink with a disappointing plop. Despite the frustrating accident, Marie lets out a strained smile, refusing to let the small setback ruin her evening. Undeterred, she rinses the noodles and eats them anyway, finding comfort in a late-night weekend radio show playing on her phone. As she listens to the radio hosts, she scribbles notes, finding a sense of connection and happiness in their shared stories. The clock strikes midnight. The camera pans over a stack of textbooks for English grammar, history, math, and science, revealing the source of her late nights, studying for university entrance exams. Marie studies diligently by the window, pouring all her energy into her books with a peaceful, determined expression. The exhaustion eventually takes over, and she falls asleep. Later, she awakens and wipes a tear from her eye, a sign of the immense pressure she's under. The scene shows her small room, books scattered everywhere, a testament to her lonely, relentless pursuit of a better future. The day of the results arrives. Marie walks down a school hallway and sits at a computer, nervously pulling up the list of accepted students. Her heart pounds as she scans the numbers, searching for her own. A wide, incredulous smile spreads across her face. All her hard work has paid off. The scenery transitions from the quiet mountains of her hometown to the bustling, overwhelming cityscape of Tokyo. She arrives on her new university campus, a sprawling, modern place that represents the first day of the rest of her life. Marie walks through the campus club fair, taking in the vibrant student life with a shy, hopeful smile. She quickly makes friends, sharing a meal at a local izakaya and becoming part of a group. Marie enjoys a drink at a bar, laughing freely. For the first time, she seems truly happy and at ease. 3 years later, the scene shifts to a sleek, modern skyscraper. Marie, with her hair tied back professionally, sits in a job interview, poised and confident. Having secured a job, Marie meets a friend at a cafe to celebrate. Her friend looks at her with admiration, exclaiming, "You're amazing." Her friend continues to praise her, amazed that she came from the countryside and managed to find a job in a top company in Tokyo. Curiously, the friend then asks her exactly where she's working. Marie answers vaguely, looking away as she explains she's just a secretary doing miscellaneous work at a local company. She elaborates that her company uses a lot of temporary employees, and it's her job to manage their lockers and supplies. Her friend is taken aback. Marie explains that the temp workers quit quickly, and one even disappeared overnight after leaving their uniform and locker key behind. The job clearly has a dark side, but Marie says with determination, "I could never do that," proud of her own perseverance. Her friend says nothing, quietly sipping her drink with a worried expression. Time moves on. Marie is now on a romantic date, sharing a bottle of wine with an ambitious young man in a suit. He surprises her by announcing that he is thinking of quitting his job. He takes a sip of wine and explains his plan, mentioning he is a friend from his studies with good business connections in China. He tells her they're planning to start their own company. Then, he presents a ring box and asks her, "Would you be part of my dream?" The story jumps forward again. Marie is now happily married and heavily pregnant. Her husband kneels before her, lovingly pressing his ear against her belly. The scene shifts to a hospital. Marie lies in a bed, having just given birth. Her mother-in-law stands by her bedside, congratulating her. "Thank you, Mother," Marie replies weakly. A close-up shows her newborn baby, sleeping peacefully. The mother-in-law announces she is leaving. Though exhausted, Marie thanks her mother-in-law, who tells her to rest. As the door closes, the baby begins to cry, but Marie simply looks at her phone, her perfect new life just beginning. A new day begins as a woman with her hair tied back cheerfully greets a young boy. She crouches down to meet his gaze, asking little Kada if he's excited about starting kindergarten soon. As she watches the boy leave, she can't help but think to herself how cute he is. Later at the playground, the neighborhood moms gather for a chat. The conversation quickly turns to gossip as one mother reveals that a girl named Masa has recently started ballet, on top of her existing swimming and English lessons. The woman from this morning listens with a look of disapproval, finding it all a bit excessive for a child who is still in kindergarten. The other mothers seem to agree. One of them complains that when her own child invited Masa to play, they were turned down because of the girl's packed schedule of lessons. The woman voices her opinion that it's better to wait until children are older for such intensive lessons. The chatter then shifts to a handout for the upcoming junior class next year, a topic that gets everyone's full attention. The discussion moves on to the kindergarten's new group system for dropping off the kids. As one mother worries about how it will work with siblings, the first woman quietly strategizes. She thinks it would be best to form their own group, as she already has one in mind. The idea of forming their own groups is met with resounding, unanimous agreement. The scene shows the exterior of the local kindergarten, the epicenter of the mother's social strategizing. The day of the new group drop-off arrives. Two mothers and their children greet each other at the front gate. The woman from the park, Mano, spots another mother and her shy daughter. She approaches them with a friendly smile, introducing herself and confirming that they are in the same drop-off group. The other mother, Mrs. Katu, responds with a cool, almost detached hello, her face partially obscured by her sleek hair and a leopard print scarf. As Mrs. Katu greets the other mothers, Mano is taken aback by her aloofness, particularly her vague response of same, leaving Mano to wonder what she meant. Just then, one of the children points out Mrs. Katu's fancy-looking watch, remarking on how cool and expensive it must be. Mrs. Katu casually dismisses the child's awe, coolly stating that her watch isn't expensive at all. Not letting it go, Mano points out Mrs. Katu's guppy bag, adding a subtly passive-aggressive comment that it's a model from 4 or 5 years ago. Mrs. Katu seems to falter for a moment before quickly announcing she has to leave. Mano quickly suggests they all go to a cafe to deepen their friendship as a group. However, Mrs. Katu politely declines, claiming she has a prior appointment. As Mrs. Katu walks away, Mano is left with a sour expression, deciding the rest of them will go without her. The scene shifts to a large, imposing, and clearly expensive modern house, revealing where Mrs. Katu and her daughter live. Inside her room, Mrs. Katu begins to change out of the clothes she wore to meet the other mothers. As she gets ready to go out for the evening, she tells her young daughter to just microwave something for dinner. When the girl asks about her dad, her mother nonchalantly replies that he's going to be late and that she'll be fine on her own. To keep her occupied, she puts on a 6-hour DVD she compiled. With a quick, "I'm off then," she leaves the apartment, leaving her daughter alone to stare at the television screen. The scene transitions to show Mrs. Katu's journey, taking her by train far from her suburban home and into the bustling city. She arrives at her destination, a commercial-looking building that seems to be a cram school or office. Inside a locker room at her job, now in a simple uniform, she greets a coworker. The coworker expresses surprise, noting that she commutes all the way from Higashinarita. "That's pretty far, 6 stations away," she exclaims, questioning why Mrs. Katu would choose a job so distant from her home. A smug, condescending smile crosses Mrs. Katu's face. In her mind, she scoffs at the woman, thinking that the long commute is the entire point. "It's because I don't want others to know," a deliberate wall she has built between her two lives. The scene reveals Mrs. Katu's secret second life. Far from the posh suburban mom, she works a grueling job as a supermarket cashier, her face etched with exhaustion as she rings up customers. Later, she's on the phone, the conversation tense. A voice on the other end, likely her husband's, explains that his company is in trouble. She argues back, frustrated, reminding him that she's already working a part-time job to help make ends meet, but he insists she must do more. The scene shifts to Mano, who is also struggling. Unable to sleep, she sits in her room surrounded by packets of pills. Her daughter, Noah, finds her and asks why she's still awake. When Noah asks about her dad, Mano replies that he isn't coming home tonight. Mano turns to her daughter, Noah, her expression serious. She tells her that from now on at kindergarten, she cannot afford to lose to the other children, not in her studies and not in her personal life. Her face twists with intensity as she projects her own life struggles onto her child. She tells Noah that she has worked her way up on her own since she was young, and commands her daughter that from now on, she cannot lose to anyone, at school or at work. The scene transitions back to the quiet suburban streets where the mother's daily lives and subtle dramas unfold. A few months later, time has passed. Mrs. Katu, now with a more confident and open smile, greets Mano and another mother. The response she gets is hesitant and awkward. The group of mothers chat, complimenting one another's clothes. Mano casually brings up an Italian restaurant that was featured on TV, steering the conversation. The other women enthusiastically discuss the delicious lunch they had at that very restaurant. As they talk about going again, it becomes clear Mrs. Gedou was excluded. Her smile fades as she thinks to herself, the same story again? Later, in the privacy of her room, Mrs. Gedou's frustration boils over. She throws down her bag and furiously kicks her bed, seething with anger over being left out. That bitch is pissing me off, she thinks. Her daughter, Akari, timidly approaches her in the midst of her rage. She asks her mother if she can go to a friend's birthday party, but Mrs. Gedou is too consumed by her anger to properly respond. The next day, Mrs. Gedou finds herself outside a modern apartment building with her daughter. Another mother confirms that this is the location for the birthday party at Mrs. Mano's place. Mrs. Gedou's face is grim and silent. The social slight becomes undeniable. The other mother mentions her own daughter's invitation, then realizes that Mrs. Gedou's daughter, Noah, wasn't invited. Flustered, she offers to ask Mrs. Mano about the oversight. The helpful mother wonders aloud what Mano's problem is and if she did something to offend her. But below, a close-up on Mrs. Gedou's face reveals a sharp, knowing grin. She understands this wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate social attack. With cold composure, Mrs. Gedou waves off the other mother's offer to help, shutting down the conversation with a simple, dismissive, "It's okay." Taking the hint, the other woman quickly backs away, saying never mind, and departs, leaving Mrs. Gedou to stare at the home where her daughter has been purposefully excluded. The day of the party arrives, marked by a festive birthday cake for Mano's daughter, Akari. At the party, the mother who had spoken to Mrs. Gedou recounts the incident to Mano. She explains that when she offered to intervene, Mrs. Gedou simply said it was fine and dropped the subject. Mano listens with narrowed eyes, her expression unreadable. The other mother continues her story, trailing off as she describes Mrs. Gedou's odd behavior. The gossip begins. Mano labels Mrs. Gedou as prideful. Another mother chimes in, agreeing that she has a condescending attitude. The conversation devolves into mimicry as the women mock Mrs. Gedou for being ostentatious. Meanwhile, back at her own home, Mrs. Gedou faces the consequences of Mano's social games. Her daughter Noah, heartbroken, asks why she's the only one not at the party, especially after telling everyone she was going. As her daughter presses for an answer, a single tear of quiet fury rolls down Mrs. Gedou's face. A dark resolve hardens in Mrs. Gedou's eyes. To her, this is more than just a childish party. She thinks to herself, making a fool of my daughter is the same as making a fool of me. Her mind flashes through images of her past hardships and sacrifices. In this moment, she feels that Mano, with this one petty act, is attempting to deny her entire life struggle. Her gaze falls upon the sleeping pills, but a different idea takes root. A cold, calculating rage settles over her as she realizes that Mano's petty social games have pushed her too far. She will pay, she vows internally, her mind already beginning to formulate a plan. She won't get away with this. And so, her plan is set in motion. When it's her turn for the carpool, Mrs. Gedou is behind the wheel. After another parent drops off their child, Mano's daughter, Akari, climbs into the back seat next to Noah. The two girls, oblivious to the simmering tensions, are now together, under the sole care of a quietly vengeful Mrs. Gedou. While driving, Mrs. Gedou's daughter, Noah, innocently suggests to Mano's daughter, Akari, that they play hide-and-seek since they have some extra time. In the driver's seat, Mrs. Gedou remains silent, her face a neutral mask. The girls cheer with excitement. Akari eagerly agrees to the game. Unbeknownst to them, the car turns off the main road, heading down a secluded path toward a remote, mountainous area. Mrs. Gedou parks the car deep in a dense forest. The two little girls get out, oblivious to the sinister turn their play date is about to take. As the two girls stand beside the car, Akari asks who will be it. With a chillingly gentle smile, Mrs. Gedou volunteers herself. She tells Akari to go ahead and find a place to hide. Trusting the adult, Akari happily runs off into the woods to find a hiding spot. When her own daughter, Noah, asks to play too, Mrs. Katu's demeanor changes. She sternly orders Noah to wait inside the car and not to come out until she is called for, locking the door behind her. Mrs. Katu pulls a cord from her clothing and walks alone down the forest path, heading deeper into the woods to seek the hidden child. Crouching in the undergrowth, Akari waits. As time stretches on, she begins to wonder why it's taking so long. A sudden noise startles her, and her face fills with alarm. Suddenly, Mrs. Katu appears behind her. Before Akari can react, Mrs. Katu lunges forward and grabs the front of her shirt. The girl's eyes widen in pure terror. The only sound is the chirping of cicadas across the silent, indifferent mountain landscape. Sometime later, Mrs. Katu returns to the car alone. When her daughter Noah asks where Akari is, she calmly lies, saying Akari got tired and is sleeping nearby. Brushing off her daughter's confusion, she continues the lie, saying Akari's mother will pick her up later. With a terrifyingly cheerful smile, she changes the subject to dinner plans and starts the car, driving away and abandoning Akari in the woods. The story jumps forward to a news report being broadcast from in front of the Mano family home. A reporter states that during police interrogation, the suspect, Mrs. Katu, claims she only remembered zipping up a bloody bag with flesh in a dream. Pundits and experts weigh in on the case. One commentator notes the incident has shed light on the suspect's life, while a mental health professional explains Mrs. Katu's backstory of escaping poverty and clawing her way up in Tokyo. The analysis continues, pointing to the widening gap between Mrs. Katu's ideal life and her desperate desire for attention. It's revealed that a large amount of psychotropic drugs and sleeping pills were found in her home. The story concludes with a reporter announcing that the court has sentenced her to life in prison. In a living room somewhere, a lone figure watches the conclusion of the news report. The final verdict is announced. The Supreme Court has ruled that the defendant was legally unaccountable for her actions at the time of the crime. The viewer is revealed to be Mano, the grieving mother. She stares blankly at the screen, her world shattered, as the camera pans to an image of the home her family once shared. The narrative leaps forward 8 years. Mano sits in a home office, surrounded by files. A news alert on her computer screen delivers a gut-wrenching update. The woman who murdered her daughter has just been released from the medical prison facility. Mano meets with a woman in a cafe. The woman slides an envelope across the table, providing Mano with the address she had asked for, the current location of her daughter's killer. The woman advises Mano against being consumed by hatred, but Mano is resolute, stating she could never forgive the killer. For her, the original capture and conviction were not enough. Her friend gently argues that this path of vengeance is not what her daughter would have wanted, and that nothing good can come from hatred. But Mano's expression remains hardened by years of grief. Mano concedes that her friend is right, but takes the envelope anyway. She then slides another envelope back in return, the payment she had promised for the information. Her quest for revenge is set in motion. The scene flashes back, revealing how Mano obtained the information. She meets with 2 private investigators in a discreet apartment above a secondhand bookshop. She recounts the facts. Mrs. Katu got divorced after her arrest and is now living alone. Mano explains her careful strategy. She hired a third party, someone completely unrelated to the case, to contact the detectives. This was done to ensure she couldn't be directly linked to the search for Mrs. Katu's whereabouts. Overcome with emotion, Mano shares painful memories of her daughter. She tells them how Akari was so scared of the dark that she couldn't even go to the bathroom by herself. Her voice breaks as she recounts how that monster strangled such an innocent and gentle child on a forsaken mountain. Her story ends with a final, tearful plea. She tells the investigators that she can't begin to fathom the terror her daughter must have felt. She begs them, please kill her after she has experienced the same pain and terror. The scene shifts to a desolate, run-down apartment complex, a far cry from the life of luxury Mrs. Katu once curated. This is where the killer now resides. The 2 investigators hired by Mano arrive at the apartment. The man, clad in a zebra print hoodie, prepares to break in, taking out a set of lockpicks and a syringe. He expertly begins to work on the door's lock, his focus entirely on the task at hand. With a final, quiet clack, the lock gives way. He has successfully breached the apartment. He slowly pushes the door open, peering into the darkness of the apartment before stepping inside. The inside of the apartment is a scene of utter squalor. The room is filled with garbage, clutter, and filth. In the middle of it all stands a lone, disheveled figure, Mrs. Gedou. She stumbles through the mess, a ghost of her former self. Empty blister packs of pills are scattered across her unmade bed, a testament to a life that has completely fallen apart. Suddenly, she seems to sense a presence, her head snapping up in awareness. She turns around to find the two investigators standing silently inside her apartment, having entered without making a sound. With her stringy hair covering her face, Mrs. Gedou looks at the intruders. A faint, eerie smile touches her lips, as if she has been expecting this moment. Her body gives out, and she collapses to the floor as a dark stain spreads across her pants. The shock has caused her to lose control. The investigators watch her impassively, their faces betraying no emotion as they stand over their now helpless target. The man pulls out a roll of heavy-duty tape. He approaches Mrs. Gedou, who is still on the floor, that same strange, vacant smile on her face. She gives a quiet sigh of defeat. Do whatever you want, she mutters, completely surrendering to her fate. With methodical efficiency, they subdue her, binding her hands and forcing her into a large black bag. They zip it shut, fulfilling the first part of Mano's vengeful request. The investigator hoists the heavy bag over his shoulder. He carries the captive Mrs. Gedou out of the apartment building and down the stairs, disappearing into the night to complete his grim task.